Mic Drop Moments is sponsored by Grow Radio. Want to launch your own podcast? Grow Radio are here to help. Grow Radio has launched and supported countless podcasts, and they'd love to do the same for you. Just hit record and they'll handle the rest. No editing stress, no technical faff, just a great podcast released when you want. Need a little extra support? Grow Radio's workshops and courses make getting started easy. Let's bring your podcast to life. Message Grow Radio on social media or reach out to Gary Jones, the founder of Grow Radio. Let's make this happen. Welcome to Mic Drop Moments, and today I'm chatting with Stephanie Ward. And Stephanie, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'm Stephanie and I'm the founder of the Spicy Brain brands. So you've probably heard of the Spicy Brain Collective. That's our free community. We support neurodivergence at all stages of business. We take care of the things behind the scenes so they can just rock up and do the things that just drives the dopamine, makes them happy. They get to go and make the money and we just keep things ticking over so that their brain isn't stretched in ways it doesn't naturally bend to.
So what type of things does an agency do?
Well, we kind of do everything. So we kind of work differently to a lot of agencies in that we don't use freelancers. A lot of people expect when you say that so you're putting people in places. But actually what we do is we have it all done in-house because we want to provide a seamless invisible service. So a lot of our clients, their people don't know that we even exist, but we cover almost everything. We have some really strange exclusions on our insurance. So we can't do accountancy, we can't do legal, we can't attend out calls with sex workers. So if somebody is doing that kind of work, we can't go and watch them make a porno, for example. Not massively sad about that. We also can't do events that have motocross or pyrotechnics. I don't know why that's a thing. I think they've probably seen me around fire and been like, no, not that. But we can take care of almost anything a business has going on behind the scenes. So building funnels, websites, comms, graphic design. We have people on the team that do almost everything, and anything that people want and we don't do, we upskill because we like to provide this just seamless all-round bubble of love for our people effectively.
And you didn't get out of bed one morning and suddenly say, I'm going to build an agency. Tell us how your business started, because I love the way that the journey, it's had momentum really, and it's just built over time. So tell us how it started.
Yeah, so back at the beginning, before it was even a business, it was just a little thing that I did while I was on maternity because I was bored. My son came early, only a week and a half, but he had me off my feet from 31 weeks. I was like, I'm gonna need something to do. And my ex-husband was like, oh, go on people per hour and just do some gigging. So I did a bit of copywriting here and there, a little bit of course writing for my sister, bits and bobs. But in 2020, I had the last operation on my pelvis, after years of being in a wheelchair. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna need a job. I was like, there's no like I was sitting there thinking I can't just sit on my bum all day. Now I'm not like in pain all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna need to do something. My friend Nikki said she'd be a VA. I said, Nikki, I'd rather shake my hands and clap. I was like, absolutely not. I think that's a horrible idea. And she went, do it anyway. I was like, fine. So I went on Facebook, I was like, hey, these are things that I can do. And somebody hired me straight away, and I was just like, oh, that worked. And I think I was quite shocked at it because I was like, why would somebody want to invest in me as a nobody? But then what happened was I got just more and more clients, and it was what I did was essentially I just showed up, Sandra. I showed up, said yes, did things, learned as I went. I've always really enjoyed learning, but I never wanted it to be as big as this. I just wanted to earn as much as my ex. I just wanted to be equal on the bills. And I did that in year two. And then in year three, I went from an estimated £38,000 a year to £750,000 in that year.
Wow.
It was the most wild experience of my life. I had to learn how to recruit people, how to retain talent, how to nurture talent. This wasn't my realm of expertise at all, but I knew that if I wanted to keep this going, I needed to have the right people. And I just flew by the seat of my pants and prayed, I think, for most of 2023, 2024.
I love that story. And the fact that you were in a wheelchair before, I mean, so many people could just accept their fate and say, right, I'm wheelchair bound, I'm disabled, this is my lot, this is my life. And what would you think was your motivation to get that sorted, get it resolved, and then move forward?
Yeah, I think for me, something that really bothers me is that disability is seen as a fixed concept. It's almost like you are in this place and you will only ever be as good as this. And I don't agree with that. I think for me is that like if you go to the gym and you're building your muscles, you need to lift 100 kilograms, for example. But if you're having a bad day and you only lift 80 that day, that's fine. But if you assume that 80 is now your capacity, you'll only lift to 80 and you will contract. So I'm a big believer in pushing to 101 kilograms. And then that becomes the normal. So you go to the next 1% more. Because the thing is that with any health condition, you will be as well as you are conditioned to be. So if your body is in bad condition, you will deteriorate. I genuinely believe that if you do the right things, like nourish your body well, move it to the best of your ability, you can do a lot to support the conditions you have. And as somebody who's learned to walk 3 times in their lives, I genuinely believe that mindset and just that desire to keep trying, even if it's really hard, is what keeps the momentum going with these things. If I slack off for too long, I know very quickly that I'm getting ill again. I will always push myself to whatever 100% looks like that day because I know what I can bring to the world. And if I'm not in the best condition I can be in, I can't bring that to the world. And I'm not done yet. Like I'm 35, I've got so much to do. I'm not finished. I'm going to keep pushing that even to my last breath because the world needs what I bring.
I love that attitude. Absolutely love it. And I think the thing is, even when you built the business back in 2003, 2004, you haven't stopped there. You're still evolving, you're still pushing forward. And despite your current health issues, which you talk about quite publicly, which I love because actually you're basically saying, look, I've got all this going on, but I can still do this.
Yeah.
And it's quite inspirational.
Yeah, it's exactly that though. I think, the internet at the minute, the online business space has got a lot of opinions and a lot of unkindness generally, and that makes me really cross. What I put online it is vulnerable, it's quite curated. There's some things I don't post about. I don't put a lot of detail in about my child because he is a teenager now. He will have social media soon, and that's his autonomy that I don't want to trample. But I do believe that it's important to share because when people think that things can't get any better for them, that they're absolutely right. If you believe that, then that's true.
Mm.
Whereas, like, I have got a heart condition and it is not doing me very well at the minute. I was at an event last week and I'm just grateful that Ivy Wet Room were there because they Ivy'd me up on the Wednesday, did the same on the Thursday, and that helped me to be as well as I could be throughout the event. But the reality was I was sick. I think what's really cool though is that I've got this community around my business, which I've accidentally grown to be quite a bit of a monster, if I'm honest, in the best ways, because I'm just cutting about. Like people know that if I'm not at the table, I'm usually in a hammock. But everyone was checking on me because they know I haven't been great. So I didn't need to lean on my staff because my community all held each other and me as well. So like one would fill my Stanley Cup, and if my like on the last day my blood pressure went completely berserk because I had an adrenaline dump and didn't want to miss the final number on stage. So I'm sitting there like trying not to fall off my chair. I've got 3 people stood around me keeping me on this chair. And then at the end they walked me to the back and like someone got my backpack, someone else got the cuff out. Like everyone rallied and I think it's really important to kind of nurture your people in a vulnerable way because they then will show for their best selves, but also it brings out that power in them that they can step up for others, and it inspires and motivates them. I can't believe that I've done what I've done with my community. Like I still wake up and I'm like, oh, da, da, da. It's
But I think that's, it's so true because I always say to people, never share anything you don't want to see on the front of a newspaper, which is still my guiding principle. And I do share personal stuff as well as business stuff because that's who we are. That, I show up to my members in my communities, warts and all, makeup, no makeup, bad hair days, good hair days, whatever it is, they get the real me. But too often we're frightened to show the bits where we really need help. And what you've done and what I've seen online is that you have shared the vulnerable stuff, you have shared where you need help, and that's why your community rallies. And too often, and I'm a big, um, let's say, made mistakes in the past and burnt myself out to my detriment because I haven't asked for help. And when you do, the community that you build, they're completely there, 200%. And I think that's so special. But if we don't tell people, how are they going to know?
exactly this. Like I think there's a lot of people who are scared to be vulnerable online because, there's this thought around cancel culture, and I have thoughts around it, and that nobody ever really gets fully cancelled. I think the cancellation is our perception of the chain of events. I think we cancel ourselves. But I do think that people are often scared to put themselves out and say I'm struggling because of the perception that people are going to think they're weak. And the thing is, like, I felt very weak and vulnerable last week. It was very hard for me to show up in that room and be there in the way I normally would be. But what I also realized is that I think people think entrepreneurship is like having this glamorous thing where you jet off here and you fly off here. Now, I actually have that. which is really strange. Like I can leave my business to go to LA for 2 weeks for funsies. And my business, all I had to do in those 2 weeks was run payroll, sign one thing off, and deal with one safeguarding, which had mostly been dealt with. So actually, I do have that lifestyle. I have a business that I've built to give me the dream, but it's not without cost, like I still have to show up to things. Our marketing pipeline involves me showing up to events because what I do is there's a Yiddish word called kvel, and it's this overwhelming sense of love and pride for other people. And it's my marketing technique. I go and I kvel on my audience. I don't try and sell to them. I don't pitch them. I just love them. I welcome them in. I'll give them advice if they want it, but I'll just make them feel welcome. Because what I know is, yes, I've got quite a long customer journey in terms of people. We are in a trust recession and it takes people longer, but people inevitably do convert. It can take 3 months, it can take nine, but by doing things that way, it works. But if I don't go to events and do that, it cuts off a huge segment of our marketing pipeline.
Yeah.
So for me to keep that momentum going, I have to be at things. And I'm trying to be balanced with it because I don't want to make myself sicker, but also I know that for my business to continue to be what it is, it needs some hard work 3 to 6 months of the year. It
Yeah.
is what it is.
And you're so right about getting in the rooms and making those. I'm talking a lot about connection
Mm.
at the moment. And yeah, it's okay being visible. It's okay putting your photos out, okay putting your videos and your show reels out. But unless people have met you face to face, unless that you've brought them into your community, and that might be a community online, but unless they feel they're getting a bit of you and you can build that conversation and that relationship, the business doesn't come. It has to flow from that connection. It's very rare. I mean, I've had it happen a couple of times. Very rare somebody comes from out the blue and just buys one of my things without knowing me at all. Mind you, they do say, I have been following you, stalking you, and lurking for 2 years on the line. But they've taken that long a time, 2 years. And I think we forget about that as business owners, that actually we do have to wait. You don't go into an event or a room and sell. It just isn't the way to do things today.
It's not like what's really good about my team is that people are starting to know them rather than me, so it does take a bit of the pressure off me. I did take Abby and Eleanor, who are my two managers, to the big festoon last week, but we were extremely strategic before we went. Like I spent days trawling social media, going through and seeing who's saying they're going to this event, who do I know that's going, and I've got a spreadsheet of every person that I knew that was going that I've sent a message to, hey, I can't wait to see you next week. And it's genuine, like that is me sending those DMs. I am excited to see them because they're people who choose to be in my space. But I can't just put a post and say, who am I seeing there? 3% of my audience will see it because of algorithm, but also it doesn't hit the same as somebody personally saying, I'm looking forward to spending time with you.
Yeah.
And like that wasn't a PA doing that. That wasn't an assistant. That wasn't my community manager. This was me, Stephanie Ward, going into my Facebook, my Instagram, my emails, saying, hi, I'm really excited to see you next week.
Yeah. And
Because it's just being
people
seen.
don't do that. It's either buy my stuff, here's my latest freebie, or something. People genuinely don't reach out either to say, I'm just checking in on you, how are you? Or, great, I'm looking forward to seeing you. And I quite often put posts out saying, who am I going to see in the room? But I've never contacted like them like that. I think that's a great idea. It's a lovely thing to do, is to genuinely say, I want to see you there. And I
Yeah.
do quite often say to people, I'm going to this event. Who am I going to see in the room? Because I think that's nice. I always say that I answer my own emails. So
Mhm.
when I send a newsletter out, I say hit reply because it comes to me. I think people think I don't write my own newsletters, but I do. And when I say hit reply, it's me it's coming back to. So I think that personal touch is really, really important right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we're at a point where people don't trust people because there's so many people selling things that damage trust. And I think just by having these personal conversations and showing genuine care, it was something Simon Squibb said, and it was at Atomicon in 2024, the first ever event I went to. He said, give without take. So giving without that expectation of reciprocity. And I do that every day because I genuinely believe whether it's that person returns it or there is just energetics that comes back to me in love from something else in the universe. I know that by putting out that just give, 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 it does inevitably come back. It's just a case of you need to be in that good energetic space. And I didn't used to buy into energetics a lot, but being around a lot more spiritual business owners is I'm cynically converting, is what I will say. My best friend's a psychic. But like for me, it's that giving that good energy, even when I don't feel great, putting that energy out, it always comes back in some way. And I'll never not be grateful for that. But it's something that I do that just happens to karmically return itself.
Yeah, I had a really great example of that last week. I gifted somebody a ticket to one of my events. I would just wanted them to feel special. Gifted them a ticket. They waited almost a year and came back to me. They couldn't go to an event and gifted me a ticket back and said, "Give this to one of your clients." And I
Oh,
gave it to one of my clients, who then introduced somebody else to an opportunity. I walked into a room on Friday and they're both there. And it was just a lovely, one of those serendipity moments where you think, actually, giving something, you never know the knock-on effects. And it's just opened up a whole new world to me. And ironically, it was at a spiritual day, and which I'm not particularly woo, but
yeah,
I'm open to it. I'm
yeah,
open to it. So yeah, I do really believe that give never to expect something in return.
yeah,
Love the idea. So what's on the cards now? You've built the agency. I
yeah,
know you're not the sort of person to sit and say, right, done that now. So
yeah.
what are you sort of working on? What's happening in Stephanie's world right now?
Yeah, so we've got some really exciting stuff coming up. I've had a laugh at myself today because so one thing that I like to do, I've got this one training I deliver. It's called the MEDS framework, and it's a framework for neurodivergent dysregulation. Anyone who understands the tool can use it with people who don't. So if a dysregulated person is there and someone else knows the tool, they can share it with them and help them. And I put it out as part of Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Thought like a couple of people were saying 278 people. I am not okay. I have never delivered to an audience like that online before. I may be mildly panicking, but what I want to do with that is I want to go into companies and deliver this to companies so that they can support their neurodivergent workforce. Because you don't get to have our beautiful magic special brains and not support us, right? But what I want to do with that, that's not to make money for me. I actually want to I've got this whole website I built years ago, which is for a non-profit named after my son. I want to use the money from that to actually give it to neurodivergent entrepreneurs who are leaving special schools because entrepreneurship isn't seen as a career option. But for children like my son, that might be the only way he has full career autonomy. So anything that I make from that, I want to do. That's kind of a little project I've got simmering there. Um, but yeah, so there's so many things going on. I've got my rapid implementation consultancy, basically just going and dealing with people who have got situations where they've left it too long and I'm just going to fix it in a day. Because so many people have got so many things they want to achieve, but we get in our own way. So I'm just going to go and magic that in for them. But at the moment, the most important thing for me is keeping the momentum with my community because I've created a place where people from all backgrounds feel safe completely accidentally because I'm just happen to be very privileged to have a diverse friend group. And so unintentionally, the proximity I've got there has done me a lot of favors, but I will never take that for granted. Like I am very privileged that people see me as a safe space. So I want to do a lot more work to bring in underrepresented founders into that because I think people do see spaces as maybe it's not for them. So keeping that going. What we learned last week at the Big Festoon was that all the people who were sat with us knew that the other people who would be sat with me were good people. So they've formed little sub friendship groups and they've all got little accountability pods and all these things. And like the fact that I invented this community because I was lonely and now it's resolving that for other people, like I could cry. I'm so excited by it. So for me, that is always going to be at the forefront. The bringing people together is just something I'm so excited about, and I can't wait to see how that develops over the next year or so because it's what we have put in there is changing the world.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And something you said there, you invented this community because you were lonely. And I think a lot of great communities are invented because people are lonely.
Yeah.
And I think, was it Leah Turner was on stage last week and she talked about loneliness and she's built a fantastic community. I've built my community around me. I live on my own, and it's a way to be with people, to reach people, to bring people together. I think I'm a connector. I tend to bring people into a space and they connect. And I just love that. I love to see what grows, what blossoms, what the collaborations that form, the businesses that form, and everything that flows from that. And I sit back and have my proud mum moments, as I call them. And when I see that happen, I just love to see people connecting.
Yeah, and this is exactly it. Like, marginalized founders, people who are marginalized by their gender identity or their disability or their ethnicity, they're more likely to experience loneliness because they don't see themselves represented in places. They don't see faces that look like theirs doing the work. And so something I'm really passionate about is celebrating all of these marginalized people because the people in my community are all neurodivergent or hardcore allies of that. And that is something that crosses across all of society, but some cultures don't celebrate it in the way it should be. So what I'm really proud of is that we do that because, like, for example, the Asian community don't really acknowledge autism in the same way as we do. So it's something that's very much swept under the carpet. It's quite an antiquated stance, but we've got work to do in terms of being like, this isn't actually a deficit. This is just a difference. And, we just love on everybody. We bring them all in and love on them. But I'll always celebrate a little bit harder when somebody who doesn't look like me joins, because it's testament to the work that we do in making sure that everyone is welcome and safe. And that's not easy work, and it's never ever going to be a job that is done.
It sounds as if you're on an amazing mission.
Thank
You're
you.
only young, you're only 35, you've got decades ahead of you. But you've got such let's say, a mature head on your shoulders for what you want to achieve, which I totally admire. It's been absolutely fantastic chatting to you. I haven't even pre-warned you with this, I always ask my guests to leave my audience with a piece of advice, a top tip. I call it your mic drop moment. What would you like to leave the audience with?
Yeah, so I have one thing that I have lived by the entire time that I've had my business, and it is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. Because I think we all get drawn into these things of like, I should be doing this, or I need to be spending that, or I must buy this. And actually, no, on my first day in this business, I had my boyfriend's old laptop, I had an iPad, I had a £7 keyboard I bought on Amazon, and that was my tech stack. That was all I had. I had free versions of software, and I've grown it into a seven-figure business with just that starting point. If you start with exactly what you've got in front of you, you have got something that will take you to the next part. But don't put yourself out, don't should yourself. Start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can.
What a brilliant message to finish on. Thank you, Stephanie Ward. It's been a pleasure to speak to you today.
Thank you very much for having me.